All right. Good morning, everybody. My name is Philip Kobernick with Peninsula Clean Energy. I'm very happy to be talking to you about our new public EV fleets program and how it can help your fleet to electrify. Some housekeeping items to get us started off with. This has been scheduled as a meeting versus a webinar. So everyone's going to be, as a default, you're going to be muted. You can unmute yourself if you have a burning question. But I request that non-essential question, just hold those off to the end when we do Q&A at the end. But everyone is going to be muted as a default. We'll be kind of muting folks if there's accidental unmutes that happen. We are recording this webinar today, so we'll be posting that to the PCE website, which will also send you a link to via email afterward. So certainly, again, feel free to take notes, but we will be recording so you can look at that later. And with that, I'm just going to go ahead and get started. I'm seeing some chats here. That's great. Feel free to introduce yourself in the chat too. Some folks from Optany will also be monitoring the chat. So if you have quick questions you'd prefer to do via chat instead of asking, by unmuting yourself, you can certainly do that in the chat as well. All right. Quick, just sanity check. Natalie, can I get a thumbs up? You're seeing my screen and everything is looking good? Great. All right, let's dive in. So a quick about Peninsula Clean Energy. So Peninsula Clean Energy we're a government agency, so we're a peer to the public agencies in this webinar in that way. We're a non-for-profit, locally led electricity providers for San Mateo County and Los Banos. So the way it works is that we go out and buy renewable power, and we have virtually greenhouse gas free power right now, working to be 100% renewable by 2025. We go out and get that power. It goes through PG&E, and then it comes to you. So if you're in San Mateo County or Los Banos, you are both a PG&E customer and a Peninsula Clean Energy customer. And because we're a government agency, we're a mission-driven organization, and one of our core missions is to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by expanding access to affordable energy solutions like electric vehicles and fleets. So here's our overview for today. I'm going to be introducing the team. We're going to be spending most of the time talking about the actual public EV fleets program, what it's being offered, the services that are being offered, the funding that's available, and then next steps for fleet managers who are interested and wanting to apply to participate in this program, and then spend the last 20 minutes or so for questions and answers. Okay, so here's the project team. Myself, I'm the transportation programs manager at Peninsula Clean Energy. I oversee all of our EV programs. That goes all the way from personal EV. We have a used EV rebate program, for example, right now. So if you're in the market for a used EV, you can get a rebate from us. That all the way to this fleets program, some different pilots we're working on with ride-hailing industry, and then our managed charging stuff that will be kicking off next summer. And then assisting Peninsula Clean Energy in this project is Optany. We have a few folks here I'm just going to introduce real quick for the sake of time. We have Brian Pachter, Natalie Hansen, and Coleman Thompson, who will all be assisting from the Optany team, and they provide real world-class assistance here. So I'm really excited to have Optany working with us on this program. All right, so what is this? What is the Public EV Fleets program, this new program from Peninsula Clean Energy? There's a few things that we're looking to do. First of all, this is going to help you plan for fleet-wide transition to electric vehicles. So we're going to be providing that planning support. We're going to help you actually install EV charging. So not just sort of theoretical, this is what you can do over time. We'll help you put steel in ground. And then we're finally going to help you maximize savings with energy management to make sure that you're really maximizing for the best total cost of ownership you can, the maximum benefit you can get with electric vehicles in your fleet. This is a free service from Peninsula Clean Energy, where this is a free benefit for our customers. We are also providing some funding into this program available for you, but we will also help you maximize state rebates, because this is an area where there's a lot of funding that is already available from the state or the air districts or from other sources. So we're going to help you find the best funding for your project, for your specific project. It's open to all local public agencies. So if you have vehicles domiciled in our service territory, which again is San Mateo County or Los Banos, and you're a public agency, you are eligible to participate. And the plan is that we're going to have this program open for the next 3 years. So we'll be kind of working on an ongoing basis for the next 3 years. And I'll talk about at the end, if you're not ready to go yet, that's fine. We'll help you get ready, but the program will be open for a few years. So it's if you're not ready at this exact moment, that's fine. Okay, so here's an overview of the services that we are providing and why they will be helpful, I think, for your fleet. So the first is an EV replacement plan. So this helps you answer questions like, what vehicles should I buy? You know, I've got these 12 different types of vehicles that are retiring in the next couple of years, or I've got 50 vehicles over the next 5 that I'm planning on. What vehicles should I buy? Like, help me actually pick vehicles. We will help you do that. What is their total cost of ownership and what are the savings potential? We'll also help you calculate that. We'll provide a fleet EV charging needs assessment. So this answers the question of, well, how many chargers am I going to need when the whole fleet goes EV? So again, this is still at the high level. Like, you know, what's my roadmap here? So maybe I need to put some chargers here now, but when I go all EV over the next 10, 15 years, what's the number that I need to get to? So I can also have that long range vision. And then we're going to start getting specific now. So we're going to help you do a charging plan at one site. And so this will answer questions like, all right, how many chargers can be installed at my depot right now? And let's design that project for you. So you can have those designs and get some chargers in the ground or on the wall. If your agency needs 100% stamped drawings to avoid having to hire a designer, we'll help you do that. This is if needed. So if you don't need that, you're either going to self-install, you've got contractors, or you just don't need that level. Like you can have a 60-70% design. We'll give you that. But if you require that to avoid having to go out to do a separate procurement to hire a design firm and just to do another procurement after that, we're trying to expedite things. So that's if you need that level of engineering plans, like single line diagrams, panel schedules, things like that. We have those resources available if needed. We're going to provide you a funding overview. And again, this is what rebates apply to my specific project. It could be a mix of Peninsula Clean Energy rebates and other rebates. We will provide you the best pathway to maximize your benefit there, your funding benefit. We're going to provide you an energy optimization plan. And so this is how can managed charging maximize my savings. Optini will give you a kind of best and worst case. This is what unmanaged charging looks like. This is what managed charging looks like. And then give you the best plan to help do that, to help maximize your savings. And then finally, we'll offer energy management services. This is through a partnership with Mobility House. So this is after you install the chargers and you say, you know what, I want to set it and forget it solution that works in the background that can schedule charging to maximize off peak and maximize my savings. We have a system that will do that. We've negotiated pricing with the Mobility House to give you a year free subscription. So you can try it. It's optional, it's up to you. And let me also add, so this is a lot. This is a whole kind of soup to nuts program offering that we have for you here. Not everybody will need everything. That's totally fine. If you already have, let's say you already have your fleet replacement roadmap, you already know which cars are going to retire, which vehicles are going to retire, and what you want to replace them with, but you need charging help, or you already have chargers, but you need help on identifying vehicles. People can, fleets can use some or all of these services as needed. We're not going to force you to do anything you don't need. And so what are the benefits? Why participate in this program? So first, we're going to help you meet upcoming CARB fleet regulations that I'll talk about in just a second. Maybe your city council has passed a green fleet policy or a climate action plan, and now they've handed that to you as the fleet or facilities manager and said, hey, we need you to implement this. So we will help you comply with directives that you've been given in that way. And then, of course, there's a lot of benefits to having EVs in your fleet, generally speaking, like reducing fuel and maintenance costs, the PM costs for The preventive maintenance cost for EVs is extremely low compared to conventional gas or diesel vehicles. You have these things back in every few months, check the air filters, check the brakes, and you send it back on the road. So a lot of potential benefits. Okay, so a quick sneak peek on what's coming down the road at the state level. So folks are unaware, the California Air Resources Board, or CARB, is working on what's called the Advanced Clean Fleets Regulation. And so this has not been finalized yet, but this will, when it is said and done, require public agencies to start buying electric vehicles. Now, there's some exceptions here, and again, the ink is not totally dry on this, so it could change. But currently, it looks like light duty is exempt. So this is more like medium, heavy duty stuff. And there are some exceptions on emergency and mutual response vehicles. But that aside, if you have vehicles that qualify, you will be expected as soon as 2024 for your annual vehicle procurement for 50% of those annual vehicle purchases to be electric. And then in 2027, it ramps up to 100%. So it's those are coming down. Those are not decades away. They're really coming pretty. 2024 is just 2 years away. Okay, and with that, I'm going to pass the baton to Natalie Hansen from Optany to talk more specifically about the individual elements here.
Thanks, Philip. So you probably are listening to all of this and you're wondering, okay, that all sounds good, but what exactly do we get? So the way that we are splitting up the services being offered is that we are looking first at a whole fleet assessment, and then second at your charging infrastructure. And that's generally how we split this in a natural way. Within the whole fleet assessment, we will do a vehicle study. We will assess your charging infrastructure needs based on your fleet, and then design a charging optimization plan and provide funding and financing recommendations. And then over on the charging infrastructure side of it, we offer design, energy management systems, and funding and financing recommendations specifically for the infrastructure. So keep in mind as we move forward, I'm going to kind of get into a little bit more detail on what goes into each of these services, but these are offered either as a sort of full service if an agency says we need all of it, we don't have any planning in place, we've not touched our fleet, or if a member agency says, or an agency says, we only need charging infrastructure assessment, kind of design, then we can just focus on that one service and not do any redundant work on in other areas. So next slide, Philip. So first, the vehicle study, what we will ask for from the agency is the fleet master inventory and 1 year of fueling transactions or vehicle usage data. That could be fueling transactions, it could be annualized odometer readings, it could be GPS data, but preferably fueling transactions, if those are available. That's going to be kind of our highest priority data set. And then we will use those inputs to create a customized vehicle replacement timeline to assess the suitability of EVs for the fleet, to make sure that the EVs that we're recommending to you meet the vehicle driving behavior and the usage, the use purpose. And then we will look at total cost of ownership between the EV options. So a lot of times if it's a light duty vehicle, there are several EV options that we can compare between. And then we will also compare those to the existing internal combustion engine vehicle to really get a sense of the reduced costs usually with the transition to EVs. And then we will estimate the annual energy needs for charging that future fleet that we recommend. So as a deliverable, the agency receives a report that summarizes the vehicle study, and then a spreadsheet-based model that provides those vehicle by vehicle recommendations. Next slide, please. So next, using that fleet electrification timeline that I described and a list of vehicles separated out by domicile facility, so where are they parked, we will assess charging infrastructure needs for a priority charging site. The way that's going to work is we will work with you directly to identify which site within your service area is has the most vehicles or is the highest priority for your agency's mandate or kind of resolution, and then we will work to specifically identify the charging needs for that site based on those vehicles. We'll provide recommendations of EV charging needs for 2025, 2030, and 2035 construction years based on the vehicle replacement timeline. And then we will model electrical load impacts based on that future charging scenario, and estimate, and modeling will be the charger quantity and your power needs. So the deliverables here it's similar. It's a charging infrastructure needs report. So the results summarized in report form, a spreadsheet-based model that details what charging infrastructure should be implemented in what years, and then a fleet electrification pro forma, which breaks down all the costs and GHG reduction for a specific site, costs and potential revenue. And then we will provide a presentation of those results to the audience of your choice. Next slide, please. On the charging infrastructure design piece, as Philip was mentioning, we can provide, if needed, of a stamped drawing, but for the most part, it'll be more like a conceptual design or not 100% design. So the input on this for this service is the domicile facility as-built drawings. We will use those and conduct a site walk to identify the ideal location of the EV charging infrastructure, to determine the electrical capacity, and then determine the charging project cost estimates. And you will receive those cost estimates for hardware and installation, and then also engineering bid documents such as a engineering pre-design or the stamp drawing if that's something that your agency requires. Next slide, please. Charging optimization and management will take the anticipated EV inventory, that's the deliverable from task 1, or if that's something that your agency already has on hand, we would use that. We would also take the charging needs assessment, which is the deliverable from task 2, or your internal plan if that exists. And we will determine vehicle charging schedules per site based on the vehicle duty cycles. We will simulate the expected unmanaged charging load per site and then provide a suggestion on the charging schedule. The deliverable here is a set of recommendations for charging optimization and 1 year of complimentary access to Charge Pilot, which is the mobility house software that is for charging optimization. And that is optional, but it's included in your service. So if you have an existing software that your agency uses and you don't want to veer away from it, that's a case where you may opt out of that complimentary access. But I think for most cases, it's going to be a smart option to just take the free complimentary access. Next slide, please. And then finally, a detailed funding and financing plan. So as you probably realized, we provide the detailed funding and financing plan for both vehicles and for the charging infrastructure. We will identify the best incentives to pursue for your agency, for your case, for the vehicles that you're purchasing, for the charging infrastructure that you have opted to to go with. And then we will also look at third-party financing strategies for your agency to consider. And we will provide a memo and, you know, try to reduce the barrier to entry as much as possible by providing an application checklist and any sort of documents that you may need to gather to apply for the recommended funding opportunities. So that is the kind of last piece of the service, but I think maybe is the most important for some folks, which is, okay, we have all this great information, but how do we pay for it? And so this will answer that question.
All right.
To you, Philip.
So let's talk about money. So we are also providing funding. Peninsula Clean Energy is providing funding for this program as well, in addition to all of the fantastic technical assistance that Optany will be providing and the guidance that they will be providing. We will also be providing funding. So the funding here is really designed to be gap funding assistance. So we're going to help you first maximize, again, state, air district, and other local rebates and other incentives, because there is quite a bit of money available in the medium heavy duty space in particular, but also there's lots of light duty funding opportunities as well. So we're gonna, depending on what your project is, which vehicles you're planning to do in the near term as part of this program, we're gonna help you maximize that first. And PCE funding will come in, but really is serving to focus on areas that we've missed or that is not otherwise served by other sources here. And so our funding here can be used for charging equipment, the incremental cost of a conventional vehicle and EV replacement, if that's applicable, installation costs, of course, energy management subscriptions. It's pretty broad on how you can use our funding. You can use it for all vehicle types and classes as well. Now, the incentive structure here is based on the unfunded project scope. So I'm going to have a few examples of this to clarify what this means. But if you have a project and you're using a bunch of rebates and the remaining total cost to do this is less than 100K, then that's where these kind of divisions come in. You would get up to 25% or 25K for local agencies and a little bit more for schools. And for local agencies, actually, it's the same as the funding is regardless of the unfunded project scope. But for schools in particular, smaller projects are going to get a little less money from us, up to 50K, and then larger projects will get up to 100K. And that, again, is based on the unfunded project scope. So if you have vehicles that are not otherwise covered by air district, the bus replacement funds or VW replacement funds or something like that, then that's where these would kick in. In addition to the funding that we have brought to the table for this program, I should also add that Peninsula Clean Energy has another bucket of funds for light duty in particular that is also going to be available. And that's for like level 2 charging, for instance, I think will be the most applicable here. But we also have what's called make ready funding. So just putting out conduit, and level 1, if that's applicable for your particular project. And I can get into that more, but there's also funding from another PCE bucket of funds that'll be up to 90,000 per site that is also available here. And if you're using that bucket, you'll have to just choose one or the other, one PCE bucket at least versus the other. But again, we're going to get into all those details when we work with you to plan this out. But let me put this into some concrete examples here. All right. So example 1, so some city X goes through our technical assistance and says, all right, you know what, right now we have 10 old Nissan Frontiers that are overdue for replacement. We're going to replace those with 10 F-150 Lightnings, the new Ford electric pickup truck. And so this is kind of a hypothetical overview of what those costs would look like. So we only fund the incremental cost. As I mentioned, we expect you to be replacing your own vehicles. But in this case, let's say the incremental cost is about $10,000 between a Nissan Frontier and the F-150. I know Ford gets pretty aggressive with government deals, but we'll see. This is all still pretty new stuff. But let's just say it's 10K. So it's $100,000 to do that. Purchasing and installing level 2 chargers. And then also some make ready. We'll try to convince you to do that as well. If you're going in there and installing chargers, you might as well run conduit while the contractor is out there to do more chargers again in the future and make that easier for yourself. So let's plan to do that here. That costs $90K. PCE's level 2, there are light duty funding projects. It's called EV Ready that can contribute $70K in funds for this project in particular. We have PG&E's EV Fleets program, which does have some vehicle-based incentives. Those that would contribute $40K in this instance. CVRP would contribute up to 20,000 in this instance. So in total, it's about a $200,000 project in terms of eligible project costs. And then about, most of that's covered, leaving the agency on the line for $60K or so to replace 10 trucks, put in 10 chargers, and then make it, plus some make ready stuff for the future. Pretty good deal, I would say. And then there's more funding available if you're located in disadvantaged communities. So I should point that out too. This is assuming you are not a DAC. I'm realizing there's some extra language at the bottom, so pardon our typo there. Example 2. So this is another heavier duty example. So let's say the county Y in this instance, wants to replace a bus, like a prison transport bus or something like that, like a large heavy duty vehicle with an EV alternative, higher incremental costs. And we'll advise you on which charging infrastructure is most applicable for a project like that. But in this hypothetical, I said that a low power level 3 charger would be the most appropriate charger for that. And so here you're now talking about like a little over $1 million project to do this particular project. So it's a lot more expensive, but there's a lot more money in this sector. So HVIP is open and has funding. So over $500,600K coming from the HVIP program in this case. And the Air District also has funding for buses. It's not open right now, so those numbers could change. So we'll see. But in this case, 100% of the incremental cost is covered. The purchase and install of the chargers is covered. The incremental cost of the vehicles is covered in this particular instance. Now, if something like the Air District's program just doesn't happen or changes dramatically, then that's where our funding would come into the equation here. We're meant to kind of plug the gaps. So this particular project rather, would have up to 25,000 from our EV Fleets program that would be available to help out this project in this instance, if something like any of these funding sources were to not work out. Okay, so that was money. Now, what's next? What are the next steps here? So first, we're going to send out, after this webinar, we're going to send out an application. So be on the lookout from an email from us. We're also posting a page on the Peninsula Clean Energy website. So as soon as that goes live, I'm expecting that in the next, either today or tomorrow, we will include a link for that in the email that you'll get from us. So you'll have one page on our website that has everything, but it will also include the application and the recording from today all on that one page. Review the data checklist. So Natalie outlined some of the things that we'll be looking for. The email and also that page on our site are going to have those in more detail, the types of data that we're looking to get from fleets to get started. So review that, start putting those together on your end. Third would be to send in our application. So upload all the information that we're looking to get, some of the data that we're looking to get on our form over the next few weeks or the next month or so. And then finally, for folks that are ready to get going, we're going to send you a participation agreement. We're also going to put that on the website because I know public agencies have different internal approval processes. Some folks might even need to go to city council approval to accept funds or to sign agreements. So I'm just going to put that on the website when it launches so you can see that and then get a sense of what level of approval will be needed on your end so you don't have to scramble. Okay, so more details on the data checklist. And again, this will also be coming to you on the website as well. But here are the things that we're looking for. So a vehicle inventory or like a master asset list is the bare minimum. We absolutely need that to get going. And so some of the elements that we're looking in that type of that report or spreadsheet that you would be providing, we need each vehicle to be identified by VIN or equipment ID. However you're using it, we're not asking you to change your data reporting. We want to use what you're using. But some of the things that we are hoping that you have are things like that. vehicle make and model, the most recent odometer reading that you have, fuel type, either the life expected years or miles. So if you you can also let us know like when it was acquired and what your typical replacement policy is, and we can make an inference on when it's going to be retired. But essentially something that lets us know how much life is left in this vehicle. If you have if you're really advanced and you have like a scoring system where like 0 to 5, and once it hits 5, that means replacement based on maintenance costs, usable life, or remaining miles, great. But we'll work with what you got. Obviously the year would be the model year would be ideal too when you acquired it. And then where is this thing? So we need to know how many vehicles are in what locations, so we can get a sense of the level of charging infrastructure that's needed where the vehicles are domiciled. Okay, and in addition to what cars you have, we need to know, or what vehicles you have, how they're being used. So one of these things would be great. Either 12 months of fueling transactions, if you have your own fueling infrastructure and you have your own record for that, great. WEX cards or things like that could work too if you're using things like fuel cards or different types of fueling credit cards to give you a sense of that. Ideally it has odometer, so we can get a sense of which vehicles are traveling and when they're refueling. If you have vehicle mileage data, again, that could be odometer readings, great. Ideally they're more frequent than an odometer update every time it comes in for a preventative maintenance service. That would really be ideal. And the creme de la creme, if you have vehicle telematics, that would be the most ideal. I'm not expecting folks to have this, but if you do have it, that really provides us a lot of insight in terms of daily usage, where it goes, where it stays. A lot of opportunities there. Maybe you can do on-route charging, what's your idling, a lot of great stuff that can be done with vehicle telematics if you have it. Okay, some info on timing here. So over the course of the 3-year program, we expect to work with 6 to 9 fleets. This is a flexible number. We can do more, but this is kind of the target range. Expect to do around 5-ish in the first year. And again, this is flexible. We can evaluate if more folks are ready to go now, we can revisit this. And each engagement, so each kind of fleet partnership project that we're working on here is expected to take 6 to 12 months per fleet. And that will probably not include construction. If we can do it faster, fantastic. A lot of the steps here in this program were designed to help streamline and expedite things. But we're expected to take 6 to 12 months per engagement to do this. So we'll need someone who can spend some time working with us over that time frame. So the timing. So after this webinar, after we send you an email, that will be when applications open. We're working on just getting a few last things finalized now, but you will get an email from us shortly in the next couple of days that will tell you that our intake process is open and that you can start applying and giving us the data that we're requesting. So the intake process will be from when we open through December 16th to be considered for year 1. So you have about a month or so to start sending us that stuff, and then we'll actually get started after the holiday break for year 1 projects. Okay, so how are we going to select if we have lots and lots of interests? Again, 5, it's a flexible number. We can go up a bit. So folks that we're really looking to get started with right away is if you have buy-in in your agency already, and that can be in the form of a climate action plan, an agreed fleet policy with targets. Basically, it says that we have a target that we're shooting for. Everybody's growing in the same direction already. Great. That's fantastic. You've got the data, you've got stuff that you can give us that we can get started with and we can get our hands into right away. That's really great, like fuel mileage records too. And then folks that are interested in going bigger, great. We want to get started with you right away. Oh, and I don't know if I mentioned this yet. Yeah, oops, I forgot to include this. Let me go back one. One requirement, you'll see this later. It's very clear in our participation agreement. But one requirement that we ask of you to participate in this is that you'll need to commit to a minimum of 5 vehicle replacements or the installation of 5 chargers within the scope of this project. So within like the 6 to 12 months that we're working with you, you'll need to do at least 5 cars or chargers, or vehicles or chargers. The reason we're doing that is because we're providing a lot of resources here, and we want to make sure that we're not doing that for just little onesie twosie projects. So we're asking for a minimum of 5 to participate in the program, and that can either be vehicles or chargers. If you really are doing one, like I just need 1 charger, or I need 1 vehicle, we can probably work with you offline and then put you into our EV Ready project so you can get some funding for that, and maybe some, I'm very happy to help. But for this level of engagement, there's that minimum commitment that I forgot to include there. Okay. Now that's all said and good. That's all great. What if you're not ready yet? What if you're hearing all this, like, I don't have any of this stuff. I'm not ready to go right away, but I do want to get started on this in the next year or 2. Great. We are here for you. This is a 3-year program. So if you're not ready to go right away, what we'll ask for you in the next 6 to 12 months, start identifying and locating your vehicles, start tracking usage. Ideally it's daily, but whatever you can work with. Start compiling fueling transaction records, odometer readings. All that stuff is super helpful for us to get started. And then we have some pro forma sample spreadsheets for you to use. So ask us for that. If you're not ready to get going, we will provide you some resources, some spreadsheets. You don't have to create everything from scratch. You can use these to start collecting data and then identifying some gaps in your fleet. So request that from us and we will give that to you. You can use the next 6 to 12 months to start gathering that data. And then once we jump into this engagement with you, you'll be ready to go. Now, you don't have to do this for every car. So when you're collecting data, or every vehicle, if you're collecting data, I would recommend you do it on a random or representative sample of vehicles. Like if you've got 50 vehicles in your fleet and it's too much of a task to collect data for all of them, choose 10. Choose the 10, a couple that are different duty cycles, different use cases, and then help give us some insights into what your fleet looks like. And of course, contact us if you have questions. Okay. With that, let's see what time we got here. So 10:40, so right on the dot. So we got 20 minutes or so for Q&A. Everyone is again muted, but you have the ability to unmute yourself. So if you go ahead and unmute yourself, we'll see how that goes. If we get tons of questions, we might have to switch to raising hands, but there we go. Let's just do it that way. So Andrea, I see you got your hand up. So why don't you go ahead and unmute yourself?
Great. I had 2 questions. Well, one, I wanted to mention, if you have the participation agreement already, we would love to see it. It's just helpful for attorney review and it'll speed up our process.
Yes.
So we'd love to, if you could send it to us, we're ready to review. And then my other question, I had read about, or like Joe Fullerton from
Yes.
Prospect Silicon Valley reached out. So I want to understand, how is this different from the Empower procurement program? I just want to leverage all the resources we can for San Mateo.
Totally. Yeah. So I've been in touch with Joe. We're still figuring out exactly how all these things can mesh together. So Joe Fullerton from Prospect Silicon Valley has some funding from the CEC to do something similar. So we may divide and conquer, or hand off folks or something like that, but he's offering very similar technical assistance to what we're doing on the vehicle replacement side. Ours goes a little bit further in terms of providing you actual schematic designs to install EV charging. If that's not something you need, then we might be doing some coordination between us. But yeah, there's a few different folks that are kind of offering something. So he is potentially another valuable resource that we still have yet to figure out exactly how we can mesh those things together.
Got it. And is Optany the one doing the schematic designs? Is this similar to what Clear Result had provided to the city for public garages?
Yeah, so there's 2 levels. So as a default, you would get something to the level of what Clear Result is providing, so like kind of like a 50-60% design. And that's the default for everybody to get something like that. if your agency can say, great, this is all we need, we can go take this and then go out to bid and hire a contractor to install the chargers, then great, that's fantastic. But if we give you that and you're like, well, actually, I need to go out and hire a designer to get these to 100% because our bid process doesn't allow for us to go out to bid for install without a 100% design, then we have GlueMac under subcontract with us, with Optiny rather, to do that level of design if needed. So it would go above Clear Result, and it would be like an actual exhibit that you could attach to an RFP to hire contractors.
Thank you.
And Sigal, I'm seeing, yes, we will share the presentation slides. Julie, I think you have your hand up.
Hi, Philip. Thanks for this great presentation. I work with 23 school districts, most of which are not on this webinar. So I'm wondering if you have like a one-pager that I could provide to all of our school districts to let them know the basics of what you presented here and how they could get involved.
Great idea. We will make one. I don't have one ready right now, but I will either make one or probably direct folks to our website, our page on our website that is being finalized now, which is essentially going to be a one-pager. It'll be kind of the everything you need to know in one place.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Any other questions here? Ori.
Hi, Philip. Thank you for the presentation. I was hoping you could clarify something about the maximum amount of funding that could be provided as part of this program. In the example where City X is replacing the 10 Nissan Frontiers, it looked like the incremental vehicle cost of $100,000 would be covered by the program. Then on the earlier slide, I think it said up to 25% or 25,000, whichever is less.
Yep.
So could you just clarify? Because
yeah, sorry about that. It's pretty confusing.
Okay.
So in this case, there's 2 buckets of PCE funding available, and you can only use one. So I went with the larger bucket for this case. So the PCE's EV Ready program provides incentives for light duty charging and provides more money. So in this instance, you're using $70,000 from another PCE program for this particular project. If that project were not available, or for some reason you went with chargers that were not covered in this other program, then the $25,000 for this program would be available for this project. Like if you needed to use low power level 3 chargers or a different type of charging system that isn't otherwise covered by our existing EV Ready, our existing and separate EV Ready program, then that 25K would kick in here. But since we already have a program for light duty EV charging that can contribute to this, I plug that in here to use that because it's more money.
Okay, great. And then the incremental vehicle cost of
yes,
$100,000, that's covered by a different program, or is that part of?
Well, in this case, I just plugged in the biggest numbers I could. So PG&E EV fleets will give you a 4K just per truck, for instance, and so you can use that to close the gap on your incremental vehicle cost. If we're giving you 25K in our EV fleets program to use, let's say your charging infrastructure is otherwise covered, yeah, it has to be used for the incremental vehicle cost. So we're expecting that you will have already saved money to replace your Frontiers as is, but you're not planning to replace them with something that's more expensive than what you were expecting to replace them with. So that's where our funding can be used there. It's pretty flexible. Like the funding that we are applying, that 25K that we're applying per project here, can really be used where it needs to be used. It needs to be used on the vehicle side, it's fine. If it needs to be used on the infrastructure side, that's fine too. But essentially what we're not doing is giving you a free car. So if you were, we're not going to give you the full cost of the F-150, we're assuming that your agency has already capitalized your replacement costs and can at least replace those trucks.
Thank you.
All right, Sigal.
Hi, thank you for the really good presentation. This is exciting. I'm sorry if I missed it, but just looking at the slide you have up now, would PC help us apply for those other grants?
Yeah, so we're gonna tell you what the requirements are. Ultimately, we can't like enter into a legal agreement on your behalf for these, but we're gonna make it as easy as possible. So we'll let you know, like for PG&E fleets, for example, like what you would need to do to apply, what type of, like, well, first of all, before you even get there, is your project eligible and a good fit for this program? So we'll identify the funding that all works for your particular project. So a lot of these funding sources are vehicle specific or like duty cycle or use case specific. So we're going to identify what works like for your project, first of all, so you don't have to do all that research. And then like what you would need to do to apply. What are the kinds of trade-offs and considerations? Like PG&E EV fleets, in this case, they might require like an easement or something like that if they're helping with the infrastructure. In this case, they're not. But we'll identify those things for you, so you can go into it prepared. But you'll need to apply. The agency will need to apply on your own for those things.
Got it. Thank you.
All right. Any questions here? Can we check anything in the chat? Is there currently, so Ori asked a follow-up, is there currently, or will you make a library, a similar list of funding resources available on your website? Great idea, Ori. We should do that. So some of that stuff will definitely be on our website. So I've already identified a few, HVIP, PG&E, for instance, when AQMD reopens their Carl Moyer funding, we'll put that on there. VW has is for bigger things typically, but if there are relevant stuff there, we'll also list that on our website too. They open in cycles, but yeah, we'll list that stuff on our page too. In addition to the funding that PC is providing.
Philip, this is Andrea. I had another question. I saw on a slide this mention of Charge Pilot. What is that?
Yeah, so Charge Pilot is with the Mobility House. So the Mobility House is part of this partnership that we're bringing with Optiny and Peninsula Clean Energy for this program to provide charge management services. So they have physical hardware that goes with your chargers to do load balancing and then energy management in terms of shifting, avoiding demand charges, moving off peak, all that stuff. And so it's optional, but highly recommended. So if we're going to install a bunch of chargers, we're going to give you that hardware from the Mobility House for free, and then a year subscription for free to try it out, test it out. And then from there on, you'll have to pay the subscription fees. But that's what Charge Pilot is. It's that type of load management system. So it's really meant to maximize the savings potential by avoiding things like demand charges, on-peak charging, and things like that.
Do they work with any type of charger, like ChargePoint, PowerFlex?
They're highly interoperable. We'll have to look on a case-by-case example. ChargePoint is the biggest question mark. I don't think they're operable with ChargePoint, unfortunately. That's really the one that does. ChargePoint really is the one charger that is much less interoperable than other ones. So if you already have a bunch of ChargePoint chargers that you're using in your fleet, that will probably be a hiccup that we'll have to evaluate in that instance. If you're not, then Mobility House is pretty darn interoperable with other things like I think PowerFlex is using Webasto chargers. All that, they're very interoperable for non-ChargePoint based chargers. But we'll also work with you, Andrea, too. If you have ChargePoint chargers, you don't want to go with the Mobility House, again, it's optional. Part of what we could do in our kind of energy management recommendations is provide you some scenario planning. So if you look at unmanaged charging versus managed charging, like what that actually entails, and if You can use your ChargePoint software to do things like demand management or load balancing, because ChargePoint can do some of that stuff on its own. We can show you the benefit of activating those features.
Great, that's a helpful explanation. We have mostly ChargePoint chargers for the public currently,
Yep,
but I think we would explore all options for fleet charging.
that's great to hear. Yeah, that's great. And Ori, I see you got your hand up again.
Yes, thanks. So one other area which we've been hearing some questions about on our fleet side is around charging schedules.
Yes.
And on the operations side, how do you get all of the chargers, you have all the electric vehicles, but now there's an operational change that needs to happen where folks are no longer, pulling into the courtyard to charge. There's vehicles that are charging different amounts of time.
Yep.
Is anybody working on kind of a best practices for that, or how to kind of set up the implementation plan from an operation standpoint without having dedicated staff to move cars that are empty onto chargers and cars that are full off of chargers?
Yeah, totally. So two-part answer to that question. So first is that the mobility house those features will involve things like scheduling. So you plug it in and it'll be charging at a later time. Now, on a fleet by fleet basis, we'll be looking at, as part of your charging like infrastructure needs, like what your vehicle to charger ratio will be, and it's going to change over time. So we may recommend that you start at a pretty high ratio, like one charger per vehicle. But over the next 5 years, that might increase. Like you might move to 2 vehicles per one charger. So it may not be something you need to deal with for a few years until EVs have been more operationalized in your fleet. And then you have some understanding about how they can be moved around off and on chargers and things like that. Or you say, you know what, for this depot, it's unstaffed and they plug in and there's no one there to move things around. So this site needs to have a 1-to-1 ratio, for instance. Then okay, then we can help you plan for that. But that might not be the case for all sites. You might be able to have some flexibility there and putting multiple vehicles and getting some throughput on chargers. So it really kind of needs to be site specific, unfortunately, and what your staff capacity is in that site, if it's staffed or unstaffed, what the vehicles are doing. It needs to kind of be that level of analysis.
Got it. Okay. It's complicated.
It's complicated. Yeah. So just for example, so when I was managing Alameda County's fleet, we had satellite sites where there was a dozen or so vehicles, and there was no fleet staff there. It was just employees would check out a car, kind of like Zipcar, scan their badge, check out a car, and these are shared pool cars, and then go. And those needed to have a 1-to-1 ratio because no one's gonna do things around. The hardest part was just getting people to just plug them in, even when there were open chargers, right? So that those need to have a 1-to-1 ratio of vehicle to chargers. For our fleet depot center, where we had staff constantly moving cars around and cars were rotating from a lot to get serviced and then back out, then we went as high as like, I think 2.5 or so vehicles to charger, because that's part of the operation already. So we were maximizing throughput as just part of daily operation. So it needs to kind of fit into what you're doing. But yeah, it's complicated.
Quick question, Philip. Would the program include plug-in hybrids as EVs?
Yes. Yeah, we're not super particular here. We want to help you get started on your journey. So all vehicles are we're not being super, it has to be electric of some kind, but we're not being super particular. That's got to have a plug, basically. 4 wheels and a plug. Or if for some reason you're using some heavy duty things that have 3 wheels or more wheels, then that's all fine too. All right, any additional questions? These have been great so far. I really appreciate everyone's thoughtful questions today. Okay.
I have one.
Please, yeah. We got another few more minutes.
So does the time account for like coordination with PG&E This is something we're trying to figure out for some of our projects, is like, do we need, if you have existing electrical capacity, do you need to coordinate with PG&E for additional load?
Excellent question, Ori. So I'm going to give you another two-parter on this. So this 6 to 12 months, it's not a cutoff. We expect that level of engagement. It's meant to just let you know, to set your expectations on how long we expect to be working with you. If you are going to PG&E and requesting new service, it will take longer than 12 months. I can just guarantee you that right now. So you're not going to get cut off. We're not going to cut you off for 12 months. If it ends up being a longer project, because a longer time frame rather, because of those types of things, then that's fine, and it will take longer if you're doing that. Now the second part is, we are going to, as hard as we possibly can, have you avoid requesting new power or new electricity, new service from PG&E. It does take forever. It takes a long time for them to, and I'm talking like a year or more, for them to engineer and then plan out a new service drop at your site. So if you have a depot that's like, you know, we can't even power the microwave at this site, it was built in the 30s or whatever, and we want to put in 30 charging stations over the next couple of years, it's probably unavoidable that we'll need to put in some power there. In that case, it makes sense. It's the best use of resources and effort to do so. But for every instance in which we can avoid bringing in new service through power management, through load management, we're going to advise that.
Got it. And then with that, like if you're not bringing in a new transformer, like does that increased load need to go through PG&E, or how does that work?
Typically not. If you're just using what you've got in your panel right now, that typically does not need to involve the PG&E. We'll have to, you know, it's going to be project specific, and we're going to look at it. But if you're using what you got in the panel that you have right now, for the most part, it should not involve PG&E.
Thank you.
Great questions, Lori. Thank you. Okay. Well, we're coming up on 2 minutes to the hour. I think I'm not seeing any other final questions here, so I'll go ahead and wrap that. Thank you all for attending. As a reminder on next steps here, so we're going to close this webinar. We're going to wrap up a few things on our end and then send you an email in the next couple of days, which will have a link to the application, our website, which will have all these resources, including this webinar recording and the participation agreement online. If it's not ready yet, because it's going through the final legal review on our end, I'll just put a little thing there that says pending. But that will be coming out in the next couple of days. So you'll be able to get a sense of what you need to start collecting resources and start getting ready to apply. And then the application will be open for about a month for your one site. So that's what's coming next. And of course, we are always available to answer any questions. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and close the webinar. Thank you all for attending. We had over 20 people attending today, so that's fantastic. And I'm happy to see such interest here. So thank you all and have a great rest of your day. Bye, everyone.